Hey everyone, so I want to do the first in what I hope will be kind of a series of book talks on my channel about various sections of the New Testament. And the reason that I'm doing this is because it's been a long time since I've read the New Testament, and when I read it, I want to read it deeply and get other people's thoughts on my thoughts as I read along. And I should say at the outset that I am not myself religious. I have been an atheist for many years. I was not raised in a religious family. I could count on one hand the number of times I've been to church. So I very much come to the Bible and religion as kind of a foreigner, as sort of looking outward into something that I find very exotic and strange. So my perspective may be rather idiosyncratic, and I just want to say at the outset that I welcome all interpretations of what is in here. The way that I'm going to structure these videos is, as I'm reading, I'm taking notes and just making observations that I find interesting or strange, and I thought that in these videos I would just articulate those observations and things that I find strange and just ask for your thoughts and give a little thought dump about each one and then leave the videos at that. So I, again, welcome comments from people who are non-religious who've read these books or are religious and have a belief of some sort and how you interpret these things. So my first note comes at chapter 5, verse 15, where Jesus says, "Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father which is in heaven." And I thought that was very odd, because it almost seems like Jesus is telling his disciples to show off their good works and their do-gooding, basically, to the whole world. And I find that very odd, because later on in the gospel, that same gospel, he says that he criticizes the Pharisees and hypocrites for doing that very thing, for making a show of their almsgiving and all the good things that they do, and he excoriates them for it. And so, is he really contradicting himself and showing a double standard, or is there a subtle difference here that I'm just not getting it? Does it really, in this case, maybe it doesn't have to do with almsgiving so much, it has to do with being an example, perhaps, or and maybe it has to do with the kind of alms that are being given. I don't know, but I'd like your thoughts on that. My next observation comes at chapter 8, verses 21 through 22, where, and this is the quote, it says, "And another of his disciples," him being Jesus, "another of his disciples said unto him, Lord, suffer me first to go and bury my father. But Jesus said unto him, Follow me, and let the dead bury their dead." And it seems like Jesus basically expects his disciples to give up any sort of personal connection to follow him. And there seem to be a lot of verses telling people that they should love God above all other things, even above their family. And he even says that he doesn't think of his mother or his brother as his mother or his brother. He only thinks of his disciples as his sort of family. And so he leads by example, I guess, in that sense. And I find that very odd, and it's clear that Jesus is an incredibly demanding leader. He expects a lot of his disciples, and I can kind of see why so many people would be attracted to him for his message, which is obviously in the Sermon on the Mount. But he's very demanding of his disciples. But again, he kind of seems to contradict that at one point, because he seems to, again, criticize the Pharisees and hypocrites for doing the very thing that he said to do. So it's basically the beginning of chapter 15, and this is what's written there. "Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. But he answered and said unto them, Why do you also transgress the commandment of God by your tradition? For God commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, Whosoever shall say to his father or mother, or his mother, It is a gift by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of God of no effect by your tradition." So basically, he seems to be criticizing these Pharisees and hypocrites and so on for doing the very thing that he said that he does and that he told other people to do. And again, it's just a weird, I don't know really whether I'm missing something or whether that's a double standard or what, but it was just another observation. And then another passage that I found very interesting, going back now, backtracking to chapter 9, starting at verse 14. This is what's written there. Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, Why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast. No man putteth a piece of new cloth unto an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. And for one thing I find interesting about that is how it says that the disciples of John approached Jesus. So this seems to suggest that John the Baptist, his disciples, and Jesus' own disciples were for a time maybe in a sort of light rivalry, which I find very interesting, and I don't feel like that's talked about very often, is maybe they were slightly in opposition. I know that there is historical work showing that John the Baptist was sort of the more prominent figure in Palestine at the time, and then Jesus was a disciple of him and then sort of superseded him. But I found it interesting that there were disciples of John and disciples of Jesus, and that the disciples of John kind of approached him with a sort of confrontation with this question. But his answer is even weirder. I literally don't know what to make of his answer. Yeah, I just not sure what to make of it, whether it's just a non-answer answer or what. But yeah, again, I would like your thoughts. And then moving forward again to chapter 16, verse 5, which I thought was really funny because so earlier in the gospel, we've seen Jesus feed thousands of people with like 5 loaves of bread. And so he sort of made it clear that you don't need physical substance if you have his spiritual substance to give. And then he sort of tells his disciples to make sure that they have everything they need for this journey that they're about to go on to. And of course the disciples think that he means food. And then he's just like, why would you think we need food when I've shown you that I can feed thousands of people with 5 loaves of bread? Obviously that's not what I mean. And I just thought it was kind of a actually jokey moment. I don't usually expect jokes from a gospel, so I thought that was funny. And then something very interesting that Jesus also says in chapter 22, so this is verses 30 through 32, and it's also one of my favorite quotes from the Bible. He says, For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. And so he's answering sort of if a man has 6 brothers and he dies, and so in sort of Jewish tradition at the time, when a man died, his wife married his brother, and in this sort of hypothetical situation, this man has 6 brothers and he dies, and so his wife marries his brother, then that brother dies, then the wife marries that brother, and then that brother dies, and so on and so forth. So this woman basically has had 7 husbands, and someone asked him, so when they die and go to heaven, like whose wife is she going to be? And he's saying that he's not really going to be anyone's husband, but that's not really my point. But moving on with verse 31, But as touching the resurrection of the dead, I have not read that which was spoken unto you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. Now, I love that quote, God is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. But it seems to be suggesting there that, this life is all that matters, and what happens after death is not really all that important, which I think is very interesting given that, heaven and hell have become so important in Christian ideology and theology and so on and so forth. So to have this verse where it seems like Jesus is saying basically that this is the only life that matters, you shouldn't be thinking about the afterlife, is pretty interesting. And now, skipping forward to my last observation, which is from chapter 26, verses 53 through 54, which is very close to Jesus' crucifixion. And Jesus basically tells this is what Jesus says to his disciples. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that thus it must be? So he's basically openly admitting that this is all kind of a show, that his crucifixion isn't isn't real. Like, it doesn't have to happen. You know, he could be saved. He could have never done it in the first place, but he's here to sort of put on a show for humankind to kind of show them how it's done, basically. But that kind of seems to stand in opposition to his reaction when he's facing his crucifixion, because he says, you know, on the cross, "Oh Lord, why hast thou forsaken me?" You know, and it seems like he has this genuine despair when he's in the middle of it. And I guess that's just Jesus' own sort of human weakness coming forth into his narrative, where he wants himself to be a god, but he realizes that he's human. So I found that very interesting. So if you have comments on anything that I've said, I would love to hear. Again, I'm not trying to trample on anyone's beliefs here. I'm just trying to read this book as a book and make sense of it. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these things. And yeah, I will just leave it at that, and I will talk to you later.